Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. My name's Nick Park and I'm taking us through a series called The Biblical Game of Thrones. We're looking at the politicking, we're looking at all of the intrigues and conspiracies that went behind the thrones of Israel and Judah from the time of King David and King Saul right down to whenever the children of Israel were carried away to captivity in Babylon. And God was in control despite all of the human maneuvering. And today we're looking at a king who really had a terrible upbringing and a terrible example and inherited a terrible future, because his name was Ahaziah and he was the son of Ahab and Jezebel, who of course brought so much evil and idolatry to the northern kingdom of Israel. Well, he took over the throne and he was a dead man walking, because God had already condemned Ahab and said, you know what, all your descendants are going to be cut off. Well, Ahaziah, he didn't make any attempt to change that. In fact, he was just as bad as his parents. In 1 Kings chapter 22 and verse 53, it says, he served Baal and worshipped him and provoked the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger in every way that his father had done. Now, Ahaziah did try to make an alliance with King Jehoshaphat of the southern kingdom of Judah, with its headquarters in Jerusalem. And they tried to build a fleet of trading ships, a merchant navy, basically, that would prosper both kingdoms with trade. And it didn't work. There was a prophet called Eliezer that said to Jehoshaphat, you can't join in with this evil king. You will be touched by his evil and you will share in his destruction. And we're simply told in scripture that the entire fleet of ships was wrecked. Doesn't say how they were wrecked. Most likely, we assume it would have been in some kind of great storm at sea. Now, Ahaziah, he fell out of a window and gravely injured himself. And he wanted to find out if he was going to recover or not. But instead of sending a message to a true prophet of the Lord, he sent a messenger to Beelzebub. Now, Beelzebub, you know that's the name that is used for Satan. Beelzebub was the god of Ekron, and his name was actually Beelzebul, which means the god of the open heavens. But the Israelites knew him as Beelzebub, the god of the flies. Basically, they said he stank. He was like something surrounded by manure, that would be infested by flies. And so here we have this king of Israel representing 10 of the tribes of Israel and sending a message concerning his future, looking for guidance from a satanic false god. And as his messengers were on their way to Ekron to consult Beelzebub, they were met by the prophet Elijah. And the prophet Elijah sent a message back and said, why has the king sent his messages to a false god instead of to the true God of Israel? Well, the king was really mad, so he sent a commander with 50 soldiers to go and arrest Elijah. And they tried to do that, and Elijah called down fire from heaven and destroyed them. So they sent out another 50 soldiers, and the same thing happened. And then the third time, the commander this time had more sense. He went with his 50 soldiers, but instead of trying to capture Elijah, he pleaded with him. He said, please, I don't want to be killed like the other guys were. Can you please have mercy on me? And so Elijah went along to see the king, and he pronounced his doom. He announced that he was not going to recover from his wounds. He was going to die from his injuries. And that is exactly what happened. Now, what we see here in this horrible story of Ahaziah is that the actions that we take as Christians don't just affect ourselves. We sow them into future generations. You know, so often we can say things and do things in the church, and others are watching us. And we can either build up the faith of that next generation, or we can destroy their faith. Ahab and Jezebel were a wicked pair of people, and they sowed wickedness into the next generation. Even if there hadn't been this curse placed upon Ahab that his descendants were going to be killed, Ahaziah was still going to end up in a bad way. Why? Because he chose evil. He followed the example of his parents. I would ask you to reflect on your life, how you live today. God has blessed you and God forgives you, but let's seek to live a life that will inspire others, that will lift them up, that will encourage future generations to believe God for greater things. May God bless you today, and join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.